Well, the big news this week, of course, has been the launch of Donald Trump's second US presidency. To cross over into local politics for a second, it's no secret that Keir Starmer and Mr Trump are quite different. But I want to talk about how the royal family fits into all of this. The King sent a personal note to Mr Trump this week. What do we know about that and what their relationship is like?
Well, as you say, it was a personal note. It was a private note, so we don't know the contents of the letter, but we know that the King is an avid letter writer. Well, in fact, Melania Trump revealed in her memoir that she and Trump keep in touch regularly with the King via letter writing. Yeah. So I think no surprise that he would have written a letter of congratulations, and I'm sure that sort of special relationship between the UK and the US will have been something played up. And I think, you know, what's so interesting about Trump's inauguration is that while Farage was there and Boris Johnson was there, you know, Keir Starmer wasn't there. And Downing Street were asked, you know, well, is this an embarrassment? You know, you've got the leader of Britain not invited to the inauguration. And they said, no, it's not a point of embarrassment at all. But actually, you know, it sort of doesn't put Keir Starmer as a big power player up there. Now, that said, no member of the royal family was there either. But I think what the royals do in this sort of power play is they act very much as soft power diplomats. They're able to do something that politicians aren't. And I think, you know, that special relationship between the US and the UK largely depends on the president's relationship with the royal family. And we know with Trump that it is a really special relationship. He's very fond, he's an Anglophile, but he's a monarchist as well. And the question does get asked a lot, usually by Republican groups, but it's what is the role of the royal family in a modern society? And you've touched on it there. It's, you know, on the one hand, we have the charities and the philanthropic work, and on the other hand, though, it's the power they can wield in situations where there is huge change in the world. I suppose they're a constant. Well, I mean, their role is to be head of state, but not political. So, you know, they can't get involved in politics, but I think that does enable them to have a different relationship with other world leaders. And I think when you look at King Charles particularly, you know, he's been very, very successful at that. And of course, this had led to a lot of speculation as to whether there's going to be a tour, either, you know, the King visiting America or Trump coming over here for a state visit. And the palace is saying there's nothing in the diary yet. I mean, these tours take a long time to plan. And of course, the president's a busy man and the King is a busy man. And with sort of 6 months of planning going into any tour, I think it's probably unlikely for this year, but I think there's every chance that we can see Trump back over here in Britain for a tour next year. And of course, if that happens, the red carpet at Buckingham Palace will very firmly be rolled out for him. As you said earlier, he's a monarchist, so we know he loves the pomp and pageantry, and who wouldn't? Do you think that's likely to be how it goes then, that he comes here as opposed to them travelling to the US? Yeah, I mean, I think it's very likely that he'll come over here. I think possibly we could see the Prince and Princess of Wales go over to the States. They've been there before. They've always been very, very well received. But yes, I think I probably would put my money on the fact that it'll be Trump coming over here. I mean, the King's got he's got overseas tours coming up this year. I mean, there's some big realms that he needs to visit. Of course, he did Australia last year, but Canada's, you know, well, Canada's having an election this year, so he can't go this year. I'd expect him to go to Canada next year, and that might pave the way for a visit to North America. We'll have to wait and see, but I think there has been speculation as to whether it will happen this year. I think that's probably a little premature, but it will happen, absolutely. And of course, bearing in mind that the election only happened in November, so as you say, there's a lot of lead time to plan that. And I understand you covered actually Mr Trump's last visit to the UK, which was with the late Queen. Yes, that was back in 2018 when he visited Windsor Castle. So what did you see on that visit? What was your impression of his relationship with the royals back then from first-hand experience? Well, he looked very, very proud to be there. Delighted to be in the company of the Queen. He is a monarchist. He's very, very fond of the late Queen. I suppose the most memorable moment, and I was broadcasting, I think, for the BBC at the time, was when they were doing the inspection of the Guard of Honour, and Trump went and moved directly in front of the Queen and sort of blocked her and, of course, dwarfed her because he's so tall and she was so tiny. And, you know, there was this big hoo-ha over this breach of protocol. You don't step in front of the Queen. Of course, you don't. You don't want to touch the Queen either. You know, she just looked utterly bemused by it. And in fact, I remember speaking to the Queen's late cousin, Lady Elizabeth Anson, for my book, The New Royals. And I asked her about that meeting with the Queen because we all wanted to know, what did the Queen make of Trump? You know, it wasn't quite clear how it had gone down. And of course, she'd entertained him back at Windsor Castle. There was that wonderful photograph of the Queen with Melania and Donald Trump and the dog food bowls being in the picture. And you think, well, this is domesticity at Windsor Castle. And Lady Anson said to me that she thoroughly enjoyed meeting Trump, that she found him to be something of an enigma. So I think, there were points where perhaps she was bemused by Trump, and I suspect many people who have met Trump would say the same thing.
Quite a compliment from the late Queen to call someone else an enigma.
Absolutely. And I think she, the late Queen enjoyed meeting all sorts of different people, and I think would have enjoyed meeting Trump. Might have been slightly perplexed as to why he'd walked directly in front of her while he was inspecting her parade, but that was Trump.
Moving on, I'd love to talk now about the Prince and Princess of Wales, because it has been such a positive start to the year for them. Katherine, yes, Katherine, I do read the comments and I thank you for the reminders. We recently heard she's in remission and the future is looking so bright. What do you think we're going to see from her next?
Well, I think, it was wonderful to see her at the Royal Marsden. I think it was deeply significant that she chose going to the place where we now know she was treated for her own cancer, to mark that first official solo engagement. The first in over a year.
Yeah.
So it was poignant, it was obviously important, and it was very personal. And I think what we're seeing her do is use that unique spotlight that she has to put it on a really important cause. I mean, cancer will affect 1 in 2 of us. And I think the Royals have done great work in a very short space of time in terms of breaking down the stigma that I think is still attached to this disease. Both the King and Princess Catherine have gone through their own cancer journeys in the past 12 months. So to see her doing this work was wonderful. I was really moved by it. She looked so well. She was really radiant. I mean, there was a wonderful photograph taken by Chris Jackson when she arrived at the hospital, and you could see her looking up at the sign. And you've got the reflection of the Royal Marsden in that photograph. And you can see, this was a place that she went to not knowing how it was going to fare for her, knowing how she was going to respond to the treatment, if she was going to be all right. And you could see that look in her face. And, I think it was a very brave... I think what she's done has been very brave to speak about it so publicly, to go back to the Royal Marsden, which she obviously wanted to do, to thank the people who'd taken care of her, to go and speak to people who are going through the treatment, which she's gone through herself. It's been in many ways a great leveller. So I think we can expect to see her do more of the work within this field. Of course, the Prince of Wales is back to work. It's been a busy start to the new year for him. We know he's going to be at the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz next week. We won't see the Princess of Wales at that, but I think we will see her at important moments. I mean, this is going to be a big year for the royal family, and I think she's going to cherry pick quite carefully the engagements that she wants to be at.